touch you, please.
Life is too short to be wearing trouble. Through me as many in a month to and while I wait, but I know my through me as many in a month to I'm very and I want to open no one now, and you may. Yes, I am a son, I know me. Yes, you are the son, I get to tell me. Make no kill body. Make no kill body.
So we're just waiting for the book signing to be finished since people have bought the book, and then we get started. So apologies for the little tardiness, but we have to let the Chief Justice sign the book.
Rough Town Records.
Mundimio, mundimida, ubimedimio, dimida. Isi mundimio, oh, mundimida. Yama mitoi, miwano.
Mr. Treats.
Good afternoon. If you could kindly settle down. I hate to do this when two Chief Justices are standing up. So good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Well, I think it's after lunch. So there's heavy traffic out there, and we are going to get started a few minutes late because there's quite a queue here for the signing of the book. I am James Gadi, a proud graduate of this university and the publisher of this book. Thank you so much for being here for the launch of this book. So some announcements first. So I'm told the bathrooms are somewhere to the right. There are ushers that will usher you there. I'm delighted to see that there will be some, we're going to give our speakers some room to say what they have to say without too much chatter. I'm just the messenger here. I would urge you to be prepared to learn and to reflect with our speakers as we celebrate the launch of this important book. The speakers will come in through that side, and there'll be somebody guiding them there, through there. There's no need to sanitize the mic because I'm not touching it, and that's what I've been instructed. They've thought about that. If you're tweeting, I'm told that the hashtag is Becons of Transformation. Now, I am more of a moderator than an MC, so my job is to announce the speakers as they come up today, and my goal in doing so is to both recognize them for being here, for giving us their time, and also because these are really inspirational figures. I count at least 4 Chief Justices in this room. So thank you so much for making time to be here. So let me say, for those of you that don't know me, again, I'm James Gadi. Again, a very proud graduate of this university. When I applied for a job here, it was very difficult to get one after my master's, but that's another story for another day, which explains why I teach at Loyola University in Chicago, and I'm delighted to be here hosting the launch of this book of my mentor, Dr. Willy Mutunga, who I met as a pupil at Warohio and Muite many years ago. I remember going for coffees with the Chief Justice, very humble gentleman, as we all know him to be, and that was in the early 90s. I remember him coming to the rescue of Senior Counsel Paul Muite when he was locked in the basement of Electricity House by state security agents, and many lawyers, then lawyers including Judge Kathurima. I'm not very good at protocol, by the way, so there's going to be less of that today. And in fact, I believe in flattening this, sometimes flattening these hierarchies. I see Judge Ibrahim, he was actually there that day when, when Senior Counsel Muite was locked in the basement. So anyway, to be brutally honest, the purpose of Sharia Publishing House is to break the dominance of Western publishing houses. Dean Kangara, Professor Kangara, when she was dean, founding dean at Riara, spent millions of pounds buying books from the UK. I believe, as an African academic, we cannot let Western publishing houses continue to dominate the production of knowledge by people like us about our own issues, our own countries. So I fundamentally believe in the bone marrow that we should publish more locally, and that the book should be accessible, affordable, and of high quality, not compromising on quality. Now, this book we are launching today exemplifies all those attributes. As Justice Albie Sachs, one of the founding justices of the South African Constitutional Court, says of this book, it showcases the innovative ideas coming from Africa's courts. Another very big thing I'm very big on, promoting the role that Africa's courts are doing, not just merely as recipients of jurisprudence from other places, but as producers of jurisprudence that other places can learn from as well. So that is the mission of Sharia Publishing House. So just another word about Sharia Publishing House. It is the home of the Afronomicslaw.org blog. The Afronomicslaw.org blog is the leading blog on comparative constitutional law as well as international economic law issues as they relate to Africa and the global south. And like Sharia Publishing House, Afronomics Law amplifies the voices and issues of those issues of comparative constitutional law, of international economic law as they relate to our issues. Sharia Publishing House is also the publisher of the African Journal of International Economic Law, which will be launching the second issue next week. And it is also home to what is called the Africa Sovereign Debt Justice Network. And it also has published another book called The Contested Empowerment of Kenya's Judiciary, 2010 to 2015, a historical institutional analysis. And there's another book coming at the end of the year on Kenya's company law, all centering African legal issues, Kenyan legal issues, global South issues. This is a really remarkable book that is being launched today. It contains over 60 speeches, 7 judicial opinions, and 3 academic articles of retired Chief Justice Willy Mutunga, written during his tenure as Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court from 2011 to 2016. It's edited by notes in the forwards. A leader, unrivaled leader of the civil society movement here, as a thinker, as an academic, as many things as we shall see this afternoon and that we shall celebrate. It covers the Constitution been beyond our wildest imaginations. I think Senior Counsel Paul Mwita will testify to that, and many others in this room. That is only one of the reasons you will hear why this book is important and remarkable from our remarkable line of speakers today. And I'd like to congratulate the three them again at the end, and the many people who have made this function possible, including the funding from Ford Foundation and the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. We don't take that for granted. Many people have worked so tirelessly to make this possible. And so without further ado, we shall start the program. Although I am the host, the real host of this program is, of course, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Nairobi, Professor Kiama, who is seated right in front here. And so, Professor Kiama, please welcome. Please help me in welcoming Professor Kiama to address us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Gadei. My aim is simple, it's just needed to welcome you all to this Taiva Hall. I want to acknowledge all the great people seated here, led by the chief guests, Honorable Mohamed Chande Athman, Tanzania Chief Justice, the Chief Justice Martha Koome, former Chief Justice Willy Mutunga, who will be presenting later, Chief Justice Othman Thande, Chief Justice David Maraga, all the judges of the Supreme Court and Court of Appeal, the Registrar of the Judiciary, Anna Mandi, the Ford Foundation representative, as well as the Director, Rule of Law Program for Anglophone, Stephanie Lotzenberger, and then Boru Wako, the President Kenya Judicial Staff Association. It is indeed a very, very great pleasure for me to welcome you all to the University of Nairobi, this Taiva Hall. A special welcome to Dr. Willy Mutunga, who we are celebrating today. Congratulations on the launch of your book, Becons of the Judiciary Transformation, selected speeches, writings, and judicial opinions of the Chief Justice. I'm glad that you choose to launch your book here at the University of Nairobi, Taiva Hall, in a community that you have been part of when you were a lecturer at the Faculty of Law for several years. As you all know, Taifa Hall is placed in a special place in the annals of our nation, Kenya. Once Kenya gained independence, this hall was renamed Taifa Hall, which is symbolic for our national ethos. Today, it is one of our icons. It has been the venue of great debates and intellectual discourse since 1956. Great leaders, local and international, have stood here and given speeches that have impacted our development as a country and as an academic institution. They include our current president, President Uhuru Kenyatta, former president, President Mwai Kibaki, former US President Barack Obama. He came here when he was a senator, as well as also Hillary Rodham Clinton, who came here in 2009, former German Chancellor, Dr. Angela Merkel in 2011, Professor Wangari Maathai, Nobel Peace Laureate, 2004, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Mutunga has been here, the leaders of Ford Foundation have been here, Darren Walker, and many others, including the French President Emmanuel Macron and the Indian President Narendra Modi. Indeed, Taifa Hall carries the spirit of the Kenyan people, democracy, openness, and diversity. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mutunga has made great contributions, not only in the judiciary, but also in academia when he was a young lecturer here. He joined the University of Nairobi in 1974 and served as the Secretary General of the University Staff Union from 1979. When he was in office as Chief Justice and even in retirement, he came to the University of Nairobi to give lectures here. We continue to value your contributions. As the premier institution in Kenya, we are proud because almost all top judges in the judiciary have passed through these institutions. They are our alumni. We value partnerships and collaborations that are of mutual benefits to all of us. We still have unexploited areas of partnership between the university and the judiciary. One such area that we could explore fully is the sharing of knowledge with our students so that we continue to mentor them. We can do guest lectures, you are all welcome here, and even webinars that will give our law students an opportunity to interact with the industry. Another area is securing support for the young scholars to undertake research in various areas of justice or delivery of justice. Let us continue to open these fields, and I'm ready for discussion with any of you. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the University of Nairobi, and congratulations to Dr. Willy Mutunga on yet another milestone. Asante and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kiama. And as our next speaker, Mufasa the poet, comes up and sets up, I want to, so Mufasa can come up and begin to set up. I did not forget to introduce Professor Kiama. I knew this was coming up. Among his many accomplishments was, first of all, his specialization is he was, among other things, chairman of the Department of Veterinary Anatomy and Physiology here, acting dean, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, associate dean of veterinary medicine, played a key role in conceptualizing and actualizing the Wangari Maathai Institute for Peace and Environmental Studies during his tenure as the director and associate dean and chairman of the department. Regionally, served as the node coordinator of the African Natural Product Training Network. Among the many, many, many accomplishments of Professor Kiama Gitahi Now, next is Mufasa, the poet, exemplifying the many faces of Willy's life and tenure as Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court. Mufasa, the poet, is Ken Kibet, and he's an artist based here in Nairobi, known for his highly emotive voice and animated delivery that sparks electric frenzy, so we're about to see that. A campaigner for social justice and human dignity, writes stories to empower individuals, and is renowned for his intense performances. And like many of the speakers who we will hear from today, has a long biography, but I think we want to hear what he has prepared for us, so karibu. Please help me in welcoming.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Okay, thank you very much. So actually, in this picture over here, I was in this picture, but I've been cropped out. This is the justice we are fighting for. This is why we're here. I remember this was my first gig ever. This was my first paying event ever. This event here. I was somewhere here. I'm supposed to be somewhere here. I never thought like I would pursue poetry as a career. And I remember after performing there, the CJ Willy invited me a number of times to perform at the Supreme Court. And I realized, actually, this thing can pay. So it's actually because of you that I followed this career. I decided to be a poet many years later. Yeah. And he always, the thing about CJ Willy was, and is, he's the most humble person I've ever met. Like, he always makes you feel like you're a part of something when you're around him. Like, you always feel like you're a part of something greater, something bigger. And thank you for supporting me all these years, supporting my poems, supporting my voice, and always inspiring me to speak. And today, I was just thinking of performing one of the poems, one of his favorite poems. And I was thinking, in a continent that is 70% youth, a Kenya, a country that is 70% youth, never has there been influence in the hands of young people like we have now, in the era of the internet and social media. But it's upon us as young people to find a way to channel this influence through the correct ways into issues that are socially relevant, not just to us, but to generations after us. This is called My Boys Are Dying. Mandela.
Unapata hauna kazi, hauna mahali pa kuishi, hauna mali, hauna amani, oh yeah. Na wewe unajitegemea, we pia unategemewa. Jirani yako anakukemea, haungekuwepo. There is nothing to fear. You have got nothing to fear. I've got nothing to fear. Love will rescue us. Love will rescue us. Trust will rescue us. Trust will rescue us.
My boys are dying. Some of them are poets. They have written 1,000 poems, but not one has earned them a living. Open mics don't open the door when the landlord closes your house. My boys are dying. Some of them are singers. You may or may not have heard their songs before, but every mealtime they eat their own songs and choke on their lyrics. My boys are dying. Don't let those Nike shoes fool you. There's nothing correct about the heart of a young man who has nothing. but his Nike shoes. My boys are dying from being misunderstood. Understand that sometimes the modern woman has a watchman, CCTV cameras, and a mobile app that will send people to fix anything in her house, so the only security she might need from her man is financial. My boys are dying because their pocket is light. My boys are dying because their heart is heavy. Maybe if they had Whitney's voice, they would sing their heart out and just watch it beating right in front of them. My boys are dying from heartbreaks, from disappointments. They're not asking to win all the time. They're asking to win at least this one time. My boys are dying because the universe has refused to accept them as stars. Now they're earthbound, bound to be art. Art is soil, soil is sometimes called dirt. My boys are dirty. My boys are dying from working in sewers and garbage points without proper gear. The family fears, but it's what steers are leaving, believing tomorrow will come, but the day is leaving. My boys are dying from taking care of families that don't feel taken care of. My boys are dying from bullet wounds. My boys are dying for being boys, for being big boys, for being just boys, for being bus boys, for being in a group of boys. My boys are dying before they are fathers. My boys are dying because they are fathers. My boys are dying to go farther. They've got bomb lyrics to bomb your TV. Check the temperatures, they are walking degrees. Their mind is a state of art. The state has refused to stage outside. My boys are dying inside. Ask the jail warden. My boys are dying from duodenal wounds, from intestinal wounds. My boys are dying outside. My boys are dying because the leaders are lying. My boys are dying because integrity is dying. My boys are dying because they have nothing to go back to. I know boys my age in the streets going back to back, blaming a whole country for not having their back. My boys are dying because they lost hope. My boys are dying because their mind is at war. My boys are dying and all our local leaders keep doing is lying, lying, lying to fry. Rush to Dubai, I wonder what to buy when my boys cannot afford a bus back home.
Hauna kazi, hauna mahali pa kuishi. Hauna mali, oh, hauna amani, oh yeah, oh, love will rescue us.
For as long as young people choose to ignore the repercussions of bad politics, the future will never be in our hands. What we'll continue to have is a phone with features.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So our next speaker is Professor Sylvia Kangara, the lead editor of this book, Becons of the Judiciary. So as you come up, Professor Kangara, she's, among many other things, the founding dean of Riera Law School, has taught at several law schools, including Washington School of Law in the US, Kabarak Law School, another very proud graduate of the University of Nairobi, Harvard Law School, and works on very interesting things. You haven't read her scholarship, I encourage you to do. Where is Professor Kangara? She's making her way up here. They worked extremely hard over the last several months on this book, and I like in particular the way they organized everything in this book, so karibu. And I see she has some helpers.
This seems really high. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, and it's just wonderful to see you all. I want to save time, so elders, leaders of the judiciary of this wonderful country, of this wonderful continent, allow me to greet you and to acknowledge your presence and to say how just wonderful it is that you're here today and you have responded to our invitation to honor this great man, Professor Willy Mutunga. So please accept our acknowledgements. This book, the idea of this book is something I would like to tell you just for a minute. It was in 2013 when I, let me say, was probably more courageous than I am now. And the speaker before me, Professor James Gathi, had organized a conference at Albany Law School. at which the chief guest was then Chief Justice Willy Mutunga. So in my bubbliness or in my eagerness, I asked Chief Justice Mutunga, could we publish your speeches and opinions? And I don't know if I regret ever asking, because after that, he never stopped asking me, how is the book coming along? And therefore, it has been a long journey here. And what I wanted to highlight is just that moment that Professor James Gathi was hosting us, and a number of people here, including Professor Makau Mutua, who's here present, at an international conference, and we got to talk about the possibility of this book that many years back. Now, I am here and I feel as if I stand in for somebody else, and this is Professor Joel Ngugi, who at the time was the director of the Judicial Training Institute and was part of working with my co-editors, Duncan Okelo and Kwamchesi Makoha, who are here, and I wish they could stand up so you can see them. So now these wonderful young people with me here on the stage, this is Kioni Ngugi, and he will say something. And this is Courtney Muiruri, who is a niece of Professor James Gathi. They are the youngest people we could find, so we just grabbed them off the street and told them, you have to come to the stage with us. So forgive us if we seem very nepotistic. And Kioni at the time was, how old were you? Were you 3 years old or 4 years old when his daddy returned from the, you can see the screen, from the US. And he was at the Judicial Training Institute, and he was a very privileged child in the sense that he was able to meet Dr. Willy Mutunga, and they've been, friends since then. So Kioni will say something, and then Courtney will say hello to you. Kioni?
Thank you. Our chief guest, honorable judges, jurists, lawyers, other guests. We have gathered here today for the launch of Dr. Mutunga's book. We are here to celebrate his achievements. Before I start, I'd like to ask the audience to give a huge round of applause to him. Through the 1982 coup, to the 1992 protests, and even to the 2013 presidential dispute, Dr. Mutunga has demonstrated exemplary patriotism to our country. While it is easy to appreciate him through verbal compliments, my message is simple, and it comes in the form of a proverb. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I believe that if we all emulate the example he has given us, we can restore democracy to our beloved country. We can enjoy the political stability we once enjoyed. That's the message I would like to give out today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Chief Justice, William Mutunga, for giving exemplary speeches during his time, and the editors who took their time and effort and wrote the book to their best. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know that there's anything more I can say other than to thank everybody who participated in the production of this book. It is the labor of many people and a labor of love, and many of them are here. So I would like to ask the participants in the workshop that we used to select the speeches that would be included in the book, could they stand so that we can acknowledge them? I know many are here. I see you, Jerry. I think I saw Atieno somewhere. I think Dr. Kwenjera was also there, the Dean of Strathmore, Professor Patricia Kamerimbote. We had an online participation by our beloved Justice Mombi Ngugi as well, and that was the process by which we prepared and selected the materials that would be included in this book. So if you read the editorial note that we have included and the acknowledgements, you will see all the people that participated, but beyond that, the methodology that was used, because you might be asking, how is it that this was selected and the other was not selected? So let me say of Chief Justice Willy Mutunga that he left us a huge archive, that it took a lot of work to work through it in order to decide what can fit in a book and what we should include. In other words, he didn't leave us without direction. He didn't leave this country without direction. He gave us direction, and we were able to look at those archives and develop this book. And then I also want to say that he has been patient. It has taken long to get where we have been. As I said, that was 2013. Kioni was still a baby, or at least always my baby, and now we see that other children have even been born and gone to school. So he has been very patient with the process. And this is to encourage others who are writing books that it takes some time, but also it takes a good team. And I think that I've been privileged to work with my co-editors and all the other participants who participated and assisted in making this book a possibility. So I hope that you're going to read it. I hope that you're going to reflect on what is in it, and that you're going even to contribute to the next a wave or another stage of ideas, because I think Dr. Mutunga has taken us up to a point, but the work still remains to be done. So let me also say that in conclusion, that this book is about change. It's about change. During the struggle for colonialism, we talked about the change of Africans getting into government, maybe, or maybe the change of Africans owning land and getting the land that had been stolen from them by the colonial regime. And that is change. That's some idea of change. And certainly Dr. Mutunga does talk about that struggle, including the struggle for economic independence and the return of lost lands, land justice. In the post-colonial period, we talked about another kind of change. And this change had an international dimension. It is development. We said Africa needs to develop, Africans need to develop, Africans need to do this and this to develop. They need markets, they need private property, they need human rights, they need this and the other. That is also change. But the change that is discussed and elaborated in the speeches, judicial opinions, and writings of Dr. Mutunga is a different kind of change that we never anticipated. After all the land has been returned, say, after all the development has been achieved, assuming it could be achieved, after all the women have got the jobs that we fought for, after all the ethnic balancing, after all, and it never gets done because there's still the international economic system to contend with that continues to oppress our people. Justice Mutunga tells us we need institutional change. All that is for nothing if our institutions do not work. And therefore, I invite you to reflect on this other change that he talks about, and to continue the other changes that others fought for, including the struggle for independence, but to really pay attention to what we need to do to make our institutions work. I will leave you with that. Accept my thanks, my really, really sincere thanks for your support through the years, not just of me, for academics here who I acknowledge heartily because I work with them, I've worked with many here, for young jurists who we teach in law schools, for people here who sometimes are not even mentioned. We acknowledge what you do to support them. And then lastly, I want to talk about the fact that this project was supported by the Ford Foundation, and you will be hearing remarks from Margaret Mliwa of Ford Foundation, but I also wanted to leave the stage letting her know how grateful we are that they came through for us and made us get to this point. This project was also supported by Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, which is also a foundation that supports rule of law programs in sub-Saharan Africa and in other parts of the world. I want Dr. Stephanie Rothenberger to know that we really are grateful that they supported us. And to you all, enjoy the rest of the evening, and thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Professor Kangara. You are a leader, you are a really great scholar, very collaborative, inclusive in your style, shifting credit to other people. That is your style. So next, and also bringing up the youth here as well, which is a really important way to make sure that the legacy of the 2010 Constitution continues into the future. So next, as we've just heard, is Ms. Margaret Mliwa of the Ford Foundation. If you can begin coming up. She's a program officer based here in Nairobi, more than 20 years of social justice experience, working with government, civil society, and philanthropy to advocate for and implement policies that champion community-driven programs with an emphasis on youth voices, rights-based approaches, and all those good things we know Ford Foundation does so well. Karibu.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah. You'll allow me to read my speech. Chief Guest, Honorable Mohamed Chande Othman, Chief Justice, Honorable Martha Koome, apologies for that. Former Chief Justice, David Maraga, former Chief Justice Willy Mutunga, judges of the Supreme Court, Vice Chancellor, University of Nairobi, and all protocols observed. On behalf of the Ford Foundation, I'm honored to be here today for the official launch of Becons of Judiciary Transformation. Today, I'm standing before you in the shadow of my colleagues, those who have come before me at the Ford Foundation, among them Dr. Willy Mutunga, and it's really a privilege to be here to witness this event. Now, the Ford Foundation began working in East Africa in 1962. So we are turning 60 years old, or we've turned 60 years old this year. And our main aim has been addressing inequality, and we put it at the center of everything we do. We work with courageous people on the front lines of social change, visionary leaders and organizations that advance justice, fairness, human dignity worldwide. We are guided by 4 goals articulated in the mission statement of the foundation. One of them is to strengthen democratic principles, reduce poverty and injustice, promote international cooperation, and advance human achievement. In the 6 decades, Ford has played a vital role in supporting leading voices in advancing constitutional reform and access to justice for historically excluded voices. Today, with our partners, we focus on underlying structures, practices, and beliefs that perpetuate inequality in its many forms, economic, political, cultural, social inequality, gender, and we improve systems and structures that shape our lives to benefit everyone, not just powerful and the privileged. Ford Foundation's journey in Kenya in supporting rule of law, democracy, and Kenya's judiciary is in a way epitomized in the Becons of judiciary transformation. The book embodies our legacy as a foundation of supporting individuals, ideas, and institutions. And I'm really proud, even as I was seated there, could see the Taifa Hall. Ford Foundation name is also part and journey of the University of Nairobi. And even as we look at it, we are looking at work that encompasses and places ordinary citizens at the heart of efforts to enhance the rule of law and democracy. The insights of the book bring into fore issues the country and the world continue confronting. And we continuously committed to working in ensuring that civic space and civic actors are able to continue working, ensuring governments work in the public interest of its citizens. Dr. Mutunga takes us behind the scenes of what happens when we stand up and fight for what we believe in. The book shares the journey of hope, passion, courage, and authenticity. It proves that we all have the power to create change by working for freer, fairer, more prosperous, and more independent East Africa. And the Ford Foundation is proud to be associated with this kind of work. Now, to conclude, it is essential to note that Ford's perspective of the book, Ford's perspective is a milestone in providing much needed legacy documents in libraries to share knowledge, practices, and continue pushing for transformative agenda. So it's our belief that this book is not just going to sit in the libraries. Many other people will take it up. Pick the baton from where Dr. Mutunga left and push it to the next level. And let me end by acknowledging the excellent work of the editorial team and publication team led by Professor Sylvia Kangara. I know there was a lot of to and fro, even in the negotiation of the grant, but thank you for your patience. And I also want to thank the Sharia Publishing House. I think it's really commendable that we have we are doing the publishing locally, and we continue supporting such initiatives. I want to reaffirm for the Foundation's commitment to bridging the inequality gap in East Africa, and we hope that we'll continue praying. We'll continue working together to ensure that we, at the end of the day, have a country that is good for all of us, and we are all living for the greater good of everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Muliwa. Now, our next speaker, she can begin coming up, is Dr. Stephanie Rothenberger of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Foundation here in Nairobi, where she heads the rule of law programs in Anglophone sub-Saharan states. And she has worked in the German Bundestag, where she was responsible for relations of the president and vice presidents of the German Bundestag with a view to the Arab world. She's one of the biggest supporters of the rule of law programs. I've been on many Zoom meetings where she's supporting all sorts of interesting programs in the country. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Honorable Chief Justice Martha Koome, Honorable CJ Emeritus David Maraga, Honorable CJ Emeritus Dr. Willy Mutunga, Honorable CJ Emeritus Osman Tande, all protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. It's a great pleasure for me to be here with you today for the launch of an important book. A book Konrad Adenauer Foundation and its Rule of Law program in particular is proud to be associated with. I first of all want to take the opportunity to extend my congratulations to Chief Justice Emeritus Dr. Willy Mutunga in the name of Konrad Adenauer Foundation and also personally for an outstanding publication which is a valuable feat and a timely contribution to the process of enhancing the rule of law and democracy in sub-Saharan Africa. Since the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution of Kenya, the Kenyan judiciary, like many other government structures in the country, has undergone and continues to undergo a tremendous transformation towards the enhancement of good governance and democracy and the protection and promotion of human rights. From a power-centered to a people-centered approach, to where access to and delivery of justice are no longer a rarity. It is befitting, therefore, that the person who set the wheels of this remarkable change in motion, Dr. Willy Mutunga, will now be unveiling his perspectives and insights with us, and his precious experiences of bringing about profound alterations to legal culture and relationships, and of restoring the respect for judicial conscience within the judiciary, with the Constitution as his always guiding star, as Justice Albisax puts it so poetically in his beautiful foreword. And we are talking about an excellent constitution that lays a stable foundation for a state that is accountable, horizontal, decentralized, and that is based on a vision of nationhood, premised on national unity and political integration while respecting diversity and giving ultimate authority to the people of Kenya. A constitution that is a product of 40 years of a brave struggle, of ambition and aspiration for democracy and human rights, as when one can read in one of Dr. Willy Mutunga's impressive speeches captured in this book. What if not a book like this, which brings together the essence of a remarkable lifetime achievement our program should support? A book that matches the core objectives of Konrad Adenauer Foundation's Rule of Law program for Sub-Saharan Africa that has been active in the region since 2006, which is the promotion and protection of constitutionalism, the independence of the judiciary, democracy, and human rights in the Sub-Saharan region and beyond. When I heard of this book for the first time, it was clear to me that this is a project we want to be part of. And I'm very honored to be here today and confident that this publication, with its author taking up the role as an ambassador for the Kenyan experience of transforming the judiciary, will provide a valuable learning experience and a precious source of knowledge for judiciaries, but not only, also for legal experts, for civil society, and for citizens in Africa and worldwide. May it be an inspiration, not only for this generation, but for the generations to come, to stand up for their rights and to pursue justice for all at all times. And I would like to extend a particular thank you to Dr. Willy Mutunga for being such a good and reliable friend to our Rule of Law program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. So we are now going to the thematic areas covered in this excellent book, beginning with Willy the intellectual. And what we're going to do, we have two virtual speakers, so we'll mix it up a bit. First, my professor at the University of Nairobi when I was a student, Professor Patricia Kameri Mbote, senior counsel, and then Judge Smoking Wanjala of the Supreme Court of Kenya, who was also my professor at the University of Nairobi. So if the IT team is ready, you can begin queuing up Professor Mbote, who is currently the director of the Law Division at the United Nations Environmental Program, and they're having the UNEP at 50 conference, so she couldn't be here today. So IT team, you can bring her up. I also see many intellectuals here, my mentors, as they bring up Professor Mbote, including Professor Makau and Professor Mutua here, who welcomed me in the US when I went there. We wanted to publish with Sharia Publishing House, not with those journals up there. So Professor Mbote, is she up? Yes, go on. Yes. Hear you.
endorses that we are doing a good job, it's worthwhile, or the academy is a worthwhile enterprise, then it actually gains, faith by those who are joining it, especially the younger ones. So I think that would be, in my view, the latest, but one of the biggest contribution of Willy to the Kenyan Academy. When he agreed to join us in Kabarak as a lecturer, I thought that, professor, I thought that he was actually saying that this is an important job. That even if you've served as Chief Justice, you can come back and serve as a lecturer, and you are not going down. In fact, you're going up. And he crowned that by doing what has not been done in a long while. In fact, apart from Professor Kameri Mbote, who is my teacher, and Professor J.B. Ojuang, who was also my teacher, we have not had an inaugural lecture in a law school in Kenya. So what Willy was saying is that this thing should be done well and rightly. And I think that would be a long, long, long-standing contribution. The other contribution would be that Willy still has a school of thought, or schools of thoughts. It looks like we no longer have academics with a school of thought. Academics move around university corridors like headless chicken. They have no idea where they're headed or where they're coming from. I don't know whether you ever did this experiment as children in the village. I'm always a villager anyway. We beheaded kukwe, and then just to see what it will do. And the animal can walk for a long while, even 3 minutes without a head, but aimlessly in a very confused manner. That's what we are in the academic. Many of the teachers you see walking around with titles have no idea the lenses through which they look at the world. They're quite confused. But what I've seen with Willy, which I think would be a good contribution, especially since he re-entered the academy, is that academics are being forced to re-examine their ways and to ask themselves what they stand for, okay? Willy is clear. The Marxist thought remains. Professor Kameri Mbote already mentioned it. Decolonization remains, or recolonization paradigms, third world approaches. And Kadi is a champion of that, and Macau is here. Willy is a big fan of those schools. And you see those ideas not just in his writing in terms of thought, but also in the process of writing itself. You will see, for example, that Willy rarely cites white people unless it is necessary. I'm sorry, I'm not being racist. I'm just saying that is his idea of scholarship. When I edited his inaugural lecture just last month, I noticed that there were a lot of white people this time round on the bibliography, and I was a bit scared. This is not Willy. I almost called to find out whether this was your work. Then I realized they were all Marxist. And then I shut up. It was 3 a.m. when I was doing this, and I was a bit scared. But I realized that he only cited them because they were a school of thought that he was proud to be associated with. But then he still came back and said, we have African Marxists, whether it's Michere Mugo, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, whether it's a Shivji, and so forth and so on. So I think he's a scholar who understands what he's doing. He understands where he's coming from, the paradigms that inform his viewpoints, the lenses through which he looks at the world, the stations from which, or the vantage point from which he approaches scholarship. And I think that is an important addition to our scholarship. So I think that would be a major view or a major addition to our thinking as scholars in Kenya and even Africa as a whole. The other contribution I see Willy having on our academy is that he's also very clear on the issues of pedagogy, issues of curriculum, and he has pronounced himself on this quite well. And I believe that whatever he says, especially because of his influence, will begin to percolate the very, very flesh that is our African academy. I could only mention 2 examples in a hurry here. One of them being that Willy, for example, believes in the Socratic method. I have taught with him constitutional law a few times now, and I know that Willy will not speak for the students. Students will have to read beforehand, and when we come to class, we will start by having a conversation. It will not be one-sided. I remember the first class I did with Willy, and I told him that I think that would be beginning too high, especially when we don't take time to even tell the students what the material is about, and then go right up there, application, evaluation, synthesis, analysis. But Willy stood his ground, and when we went to class, I was surprised that our students could move to that level quite easily, quite fast. In fact, we've been giving them milk when they are ready for the bones. And that's my lesson teaching with Willy. The other one is belief in the interdisciplinary studies, especially at the curriculum level, that we have been too thin, that we became so bereft of ideas because of that we could be a bit wider and accommodate other disciplines, other subjects, and that way we form the students better. That conversation is on in Kabarak, and I'm sure that when we review our curriculum at some point, we will be able to bring interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary studies, and I think I mean different things by those, and then eventually have a very rich curriculum that brings out an all-round lawyer. Finally, the contribution I see Willy making, and he's done this for some time, is to document our experiences. It is a trend that I think Jomo Kenyatta began, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga followed, and it's the trend whereby you write about what you experienced, your life experiences, but also professional experiences. We are all familiar with Facing Mount Kenya or Not Yet Uhuru, and I think they were very good accounts of our history, of our cultures, of our societies, histories that we never have accessed at this point, but which our leaders were able to put together. I see that Willy is a good student of that, and he's been able to, document his experiences in civil society. I was privileged to have edited the last edition of his most famous book, Constitution Making from the Middle. And I noticed that if Willy hadn't written that book, we would have missed out on a lot of details in the constitutional reform movement in this country. So that means that just by documenting, Willy has been able to capture for us, especially the young generation that might never have seen even Timothy Njoya being clobbered, I'm sorry to use the wrong example, by Mr. Lihotio. So Willy captures those experiences. I'm aware that he's finalizing his memoirs, and which means that he joins the likes of Museneke, Chief Justice, in documenting experiences from the judicial arm, especially what they saw, what they experienced, what they went through, their fears and concerns at the helm of the judiciary. We haven't had that culture in Kenya of documenting experiences from the judicial arm especially. I've always wondered what Chief Justice Chunga would have written. I've always wondered what Chief Justice Chesoni would have said. Or even Chief Justice Evans Gisheru, the late. I'm talking about some of the late now. I think it would have been nice for them to put down something about their tenure and carry it forward for the future to refer to. And that culture is a fantastic one, and I think Willy has done it quite well. First, in his inaugural lecture, which just captures his experiences of thought, but secondly, in his memoirs from the judicial side, which then captures his experiences as Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya. I think those are critical, very important experiences that then distinguish Willy from the ordinary academic you see walking around the streets or even the university halls. Thank you very much for listening, and may God bless you.
Thank you so much. I think, Professor Kangara, you'll agree, that is one chapter in the first shrift. Because this is the writings, selected writings. There is going to be the first shrift. But before we get there, we have to dig into the rich legacy of Chief Justice Maraga. So that before there's going to be the first shrift, and then there's going to be, another one like this, perhaps for Justice Maraga. Our next speaker is the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, Anne Amadi, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. So please come up. Masters in Criminal Justice from Boston University, a Bachelor of Laws degree from University of Nairobi, another proud graduate, and really one of the constitutional offices that is really important and has served under various Chief Justices, all the Chief Justices, so karibu sana.
Thank you very much. Our chief guests, honorable Chief Justices, present and current. I'm so happy to be here this afternoon. Thank you to the organizers for having us. I feel humbled to be before the three Chief Justices under whom I've served. This is a rare privilege. I do not take it for granted. And I'm also very happy to be here as a proud alumni of this great institution. I have very fond memories of Taifa Hall. I was asked to be very brief as I talk about Honorable Dr. Willy Mutunga, which is difficult for me because you know that the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya is also the chair of the Judicial Service Commission, is also the chair of the National Council on the Administration of Justice, is also the chair of Kenya Law, and the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary is the secretary of all those agencies. So in a sense, the Chief Registrar is joined at the hip with the Chief Justice. And that makes me have so much to say about all the three Chief Justices sitting here. And I hope one day I'll have an opportunity to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, I've had the privilege and honor to serve under the first Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya under the Constitution of Kenya 2010, Dr. Willy Mutunga. And as we all know, the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya heralded a new beginning for most institutions. For the judiciary, this call was even more urgent, as we all know that the judiciary is an institution, an arm of government that is traditionally marginalized. It therefore became imperative for the judiciary to develop a mechanism for institutional renewal that would enhance public confidence and faith in it. I came into the judiciary as a second chief registrar under the new constitution, and this was a time of relative anxiety and unease in the judiciary, and most of this is indeed in the public domain. The Honorable the Chief Justice, Dr. Mutunga, possesses the perfect combination of humanity and humility, virtues that helped create a positive surrounding and peaceful work environment in an otherwise threatening space. Dr. Mutunga, as Dr. Professor Kameri Mbote was saying just before the line dropped, is very proud of his Kitui roots, never missed an opportunity to demonstrate that. His very easy nature makes him come across as someone who never lost sleep over anything, even as we were going through turmoil in the judiciary at the time. Dr. Mutunga's modesty, compassion, and dedication to mankind was evident in his much celebrated people-centered transformation agenda for the judiciary. And many times, Dr. Mutunga, if you can remember, you referred to our human resource directorate as the inhuman human resource directorate, because you had so much compassion on the staff that you felt that strict application of some of our rules and procedures was as a result of could be described as inhuman. And that's really who you are to us. Your sense of integrity set you apart from the unfortunate vice that we are known for as institutions. Dr. Mutunga was never known to work for materialism, but rather for human welfare and society. At the time that I came in, as we were implementing the judiciary transformation framework, which hinged on the pillars of people-focused service delivery, transformative leadership, adequate financial resources, and harnessing technology as an enabler of justice. Some of the privileges that we now enjoy are taken for granted. We forget the amount of effort that it took to bring this to bear. Chief Justice Mutunga went personally to all the offices that mattered to make sure that the judiciary got its rightful place in society. We celebrate you for everything that you've done for the judiciary, and we're looking forward to just having a look at this volume that you've come up with, because I suppose it is going to let us into some of your deepest thoughts, your concerns, your views on how we can not only be a better judiciary, but a better Kenya. The judiciary today has continued to grow on the foundations that you laid. After the Judiciary Transformation Framework, we had the Sustaining Judiciary Transformation under Honorable Chief Justice Maraga, and right now we are implementing social transformation through access to justice, which is the vision of our new Chief Justice. All of them built on the foundations that you laid. They will remain etched in our history. We remain proud of the initiatives that you introduced to the judiciary, and I also want to just take this opportunity to thank the judiciary family that is here this afternoon. If we could just rise up so that we can express solidarity, so that the Chief Justice can see how proud we are of him. This is the whole team from the judiciary here to celebrate you, Honorable Justice Mutunga. I do not wish to preempt what my former Chief Justices will say, and I want to end there. Thank you so much. We look forward to a great read. May God bless you.
Okay, so one quick announcement. If Gado is here, please identify yourself to the ushers. Next, please, Boru, come up. We've heard about the Chief Justices come up. We have heard about his compassion for the judiciary staff. After this, we'll have Chief Justice Maraga, because we have to give him, he has to, so that he's, we are done, he has to attend to his Sabbath, and then we'll continue according to the program. So my apologies, Senior Counsel Mwite. Mr. Boru, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have a lot to say, but I think you can brace yourself for the longest speech here. So, I begin. Transformational, calmly firm, humane, a genuine friend to the downtrodden, fatherly, and one with a keen eye on performance is what we will describe the Chief Justice Emeritus, Dr. Willy Mutunga. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. My name is Boru Wako. I am the president of the Kenya Judicial Staff Association, an association that's composed of all non-judiciary, apart from judges and magistrates, those who perform non-judicial work. So anything that I say here, it's not me, Boru, but it is echoes what my colleagues all believe in. So when you read at the back of the book, what we say there, just remember it is about all of us in the judiciary. Let me repeat this. It has already been said by one of the speakers. What is the significance of this event? If anyone might have missed, to remind us the importance of this publication and the impact of making the speeches and the judicial decisions available to the public, let me take the liberty to opine on that. Dr. Mutunga made memorable remarks, speeches, and some dissenting and concurring decisions which will help us reflect and celebrate the leader he is. Writings outlive the flesh we are made of, and it is this assurance that makes this event to be a historic reference point for the future generation. Today in your program, the slot for the Judicial Staff Association is deliberate, not because many believed in the paralegal staff, as then we were referred to pre-Willy Mutunga's era, but because it is Dr. Willy's initiative. Judicial staff are what they are, courtesy of Willy Mutunga, and the birth of the association, I confidently say, was midwifed by his administration. Just like he championed the people-focused judiciary as one of the pillars of the Judiciary Transformation Framework, he not only had the Kenyan people in mind, but he was equally inward-looking. It was during his tenure that the judicial staff felt a sense of belonging to the judiciary. His administration saw a judicial staff that in the history of Kenyan judiciary speaks out on corruption, comes out as customer care champions, feel the responsibility of projecting the desired image of the judiciary, and basically feel proud and happy to serve in the judiciary, not work, but serve. Most of all, being involved in decision making. Dr. Mutunga, be assured we might not be where you might have envisioned us to be, but while you are away on retirement, Honorable Chief Justice Mother Koome, seated next to you, has taken the cue, and we are part of the decision makers of the judiciary currently. And first, can I report this? I was on Spice FM and KTN Home to speak for and on behalf of my colleagues in November last year. It is Mutunga's administration that imparted the culture of small things matter. Today, it is far-fetched to comprehend the fact that Office T, which seems to be too simple, yet a great motivator to any workforce, was only a privilege to the high and mighty. The introduction of Open Judiciary Days not only brought out a judiciary that opened its door to the public, but brought out the human face of the judiciary. It was during his tenure that we saw bureaucratic ties being broken for the good of the judiciary and, by extension, Kenya. He presided over the first ever Judiciary Sports Day, an activity that enhanced cohesion within the organization. Dr. Mutunga was that administrator that fearlessly brought to the fore the deep-rooted culture of nepotism, tribalism, and favoritism. It is during his reign that we saw an upward change of pay packs for the judicial staff. He radically did so. Slow but sure way of eradicating corruption. Daktari led from the front in appreciating our colleagues abled differently. He once, during a White Cane Safety Day, joined our staff and walked blindfolded from the Supreme Court building to the Kenya Society for the Blind, Nairobi West. You have no idea what that meant to this group of staff. Especially when he hosted them to a special dinner after the event. They say small things matter. That is Mutunga, the administrator. The Judiciary Training Institution, during Dr. Willy's administration, the entire judiciary felt the institute. There were 5 trainings in 2011, and 53 judges consumed more than 65% of training budget of the judiciary in 2011. By 2016, 100% of the judiciary workforce had passed through a course or a training organized by or through the JTI. A forum that helps all internalize the judiciary transformation framework as a way of bringing all on board towards implementing the same. It is an open secret that it is in Mutunga's era that judiciary received an increased budgetary allocation from a paltry 3 billion to Kenya shillings 16 billion. Allow me to pen off by quoting Daktari himself. I know this is very famous, you will relate. We found an institution so frail in its structure, so thin in resources, so low in its confidence, so deficient in integrity, so weak in public support, that to have expected it to deliver justice was to widely be optimistic. We found a judiciary that was designed to fail. End of quote. This was the game changer statement for me. Hence, it should outlive all of us. And the best place to store such a writing, a publication such as this. Daktari, others may have seen you otherwise, but to us, the judiciary staff, you remain our hero. You are the best administrator. If our vote will get you back, take it to the bank. It will be a resounding victory. On behalf of all the judiciary staff in Kenya, I say thank you for the improved salary. Thank you for the improved work environment. Thank you for fighting for the minority. Thank you for being you, a great administrator in the eyes of judicial staff.
Thank you so much. So now we are going to the 3 M's, Maraga, Mwite, Mbote. Chief Justice Maraga needs no introduction. She was our second Chief Justice under our excellent 2010 Constitution, which we hope survives between 2016 and 2021. Presiding Judge, Court of Appeal in Kisumu, Chairperson of the Judiciary Committee on Elections, among many, many things. As he comes up, I'll tell you, our judiciary is in the spotlight in the world because of the work judges, including the Chief Justice, have done. Karibu sana, Chief Justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Gadi. The Honorable the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, Justice Martha Koome, the Chief Guests, CJ Emeritus Uthman Thande, CJ Emeritus Mutunga, judges, Professor Kiama, the Vice Chancellor of this great institution, Senior Council, members of the development community, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm happy to join you here this afternoon for the launch of this outstanding publication, Beacons of Judicial Transformation, Selected Speeches, Writings, and Judicial Opinions of Chief Justice Willy Mutunga. We have heard and we are going to hear various speakers on various aspects of CJ Mutunga's rich professional journey. From being a practitioner, champion, and activist for social justice, the academia, and public intellectual, as well as on the bench as a judge and head of the judiciary. Mine is just to emphasize or put in my own words two aspects of Dr. Mutunga's work. The first one, the Constitution of Kenya 2010 brought a lot of changes to our justice system. However, as we all know, any constitution is as good as its implementation. Without an independent judiciary and men and women of integrity with a vision to oversee implementation, provisions of our constitution, however laudable, will be just a dead letter of the law, not even worthy the paper it is written on. Having himself been detained and suffered grave injustice under the former constitution, and keenly aware of the political federal elites whose predatory and studious intent was to continue to subjugate the judiciary, upon his appointment as the first Chief Justice of Kenya under the new constitution, CJ Mutunga led the judiciary leadership into crafting a transformation, a transformation framework to establish the independent judiciary envisioned by the new constitution. Those efforts birthed the judiciary transformation framework that laid down the fundamental pillars upon which the judiciary stands today. This country will be forever grateful for his visionary leadership, which came at the time it was needed most. When I succeeded CJ Mutunga as head of the judiciary, upon a thorough examination of the judiciary transformation framework and consultation with the judiciary leadership, I formed the view that before any further reform initiatives were initiated, what my four-year tenure required was the sustenance and rapid expansion of the initiatives CJ Mutunga had begun. That informed my own judiciary blueprint, sustaining judiciary transformation. The second point I want to touch on, I wish to point out that CJ Mutunga managed to harmonize to humanize and transform the judiciary into an institution that is relevant to people's struggles for justice. I remember vividly when I was a judge of the High Court in Mombasa, and a witness came to the witness box, and he actually said, "Habari judge," something that would not happen. He made my day. The older citizens gathered in this hall today know that under the old regime, courts were alienated from the people. Many ordinary Kenyans did not see courts as places which are actually meant to protect their rights and ensure justice is served. Instead, the idea of a court or judicial process evoked fear and terror. However, through the many initiatives in CJ Mutunga's judiciary transformation framework, many Kenyans came to understand courts as institutions that work for them. The publication that is about to be launched today is not just a collection of lectures, speeches, and judicial decisions that provides the reader with a picture of who CJ Mutunga is, his philosophy, his worldview, and understanding of justice. It is also, in my view, a timely reference material for those seeking to further strengthen the independence of the Kenyan judiciary. I commend it to both members of the bench and the bar, as well as the general public. Once again, I congratulate you, CJ Mutunga, on the launch of this great publication. I also wish to appreciate the entire team, including Professor Sylvia Kangara, Duncan Okello, Wamcheti Makoka, and others who put in many hours of work which made this publication possible. Well done, all of you, and we appreciate you. Let me end there, because as I said, mine was not a long speech. I want to thank you all for listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice Maraga, and also for noting that these are not long speeches. We are celebrating the launch of this book. And next is, of course, Senior Counsel Paul Mwite, who also needs no introduction, 51 years, legal practice experience, admitted in 1970, so very, very, very senior counsel, president of the Law Society of Kenya at a really difficult moment, very courageous, was my law firm partner, really proud. He actually encouraged me to go study abroad, and made me call Athinda Mutua in his office. Thank you.
Our chief guest, Chief Justice Thande, our Chief Justice Martha Koome, Chief Justice Willy Mutunga, Chief Justice David Maraga, judges of the Supreme Court who are present, judges of the Court of Appeal who are present, Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, our host, the Vice Chancellor, all protocols observed. Kenya was exceptionally lucky to have had Dr. Willy Mutunga as the first Chief Justice under the transformative 2010 Constitution, the struggle for the realization of which Dr. Mutunga was a central figure, suffered for it, including being kicked out as a lecturer from this very university in the early 80s, straight to detention without trial under the then Preservation of Public Security Act. I've always thought and admired the creativity of the drafters of that statute. You know, a statute that violated, legalized violations of the Bill of Rights, freedom of conscience, expression, was titled Preservation of Public Security. Reject these nyayos was the title to the article Willy had written, calling on Kenyans to ignore the second president's vow to follow in the footsteps of his predecessor, the first president, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. So that long before Willy served as my vice chairman in the LSK in the late 80s and early 90s, Willy had already set the trail. Note that in those days, under another statute, the National Emblems Act, it was a serious criminal offense for anyone to use the title president. There was only one president who was also farmer number one, teacher number one everything. So Willy and I were simply chairman and vice chairman of the Law Society, not president, vice president. Our term of office started with an ex parte injunction against the LSK Council, which included the Honorable Mother Karua, the Honorable GBM Kariuki, the Honorable Nyachai, Charles Nyachai, amongst others. The injunction was against the council making any political statements. The injunction was followed in quick order with a contempt application. The political statement constituting the contempt was calling for the restoration of security of tenure for judges, which had been removed so that henceforth judges held office at the pleasure of the president. The then Chief Justice issued a rare press release in which he stated that their security of tenure as judges was guaranteed by His Excellency the President, and that the LSK Council were busybodies. I remain eternally grateful for the clarity of thought, courage, and commitment that Willy Mutunga provided to the LSK Council in those very dark days. Let me touch on three issues which I consider defining of Dr. Willy Mutunga's term as Kenya's first Chief Justice under the 2010 Constitution. First, it matters the leader of an institution. The character of a high school takes from its headmaster or headmistress. If the headmaster is good, the school, the character, the discipline will be there. Willy Mutunga's commitment to Kenya becoming a democratic state governed by the rule of law and not the rule of men or women provided much needed clarity of thought in the second liberation struggle, and it is the same clarity of thought and commitment that is evident in the pages of this book. We see a leader who understood Kenya's legal history from the colonial times through to the many missed steps following independence in 1963. He understood direct and indirect existing and new threats to the judiciary and set out to chart the way forward for a nation that had a few months earlier expressed itself through a referendum and had put the old order on notice. This bold and conscientious leader, whose integrity, like Caesar's wife, is beyond suspicion, and in a sea of corruption swirling around our nation, speaks through the pages of this book. Not of taking power upon assuming the office of Chief Justice, but of a struggle to transform the legal practices, jurisprudential orientation, and institutional culture of the Kenyan judiciary in order to align it with the demands of the 2010 Constitution. To this historic moment in Kenya's history, he brought leadership honed over decades. Second, it is during Chief Justice Willy Mutunga's term that the office of the Judiciary Ombudsman was launched. It was done in a way that protected the independence of the judiciary, which is not only an important constitutional value, but a critical institutional pillar. It rests with the leader of an institution to secure accountability by its officers and to address challenges internal accountability mechanisms face. This is a mandate derived from the text of the Constitution and the demands of effective, accountable leadership. In my view, the independence of the judiciary should not be sacrificed at the altar of unconstitutional judicial accountability mechanisms. It is possible to pursue both through constitutional means. These are issues that preoccupied us during the second liberation struggle and remain challenging. While the judiciary can and must indeed play its role, the transformation of the Kenyan society needs the other institutions and arms of government to play their role. Ultimately, the real guarantor for the rule of law is an informed public. Challenges will always be there, as we are finding currently with one of the oldest democracies out there. The one enduring achievement of the second liberation is the empowerment of the Kenyan people. No one, no president, will ever succeed in taking Kenya back to dictatorship. And I'm happy to see my dear friend, Professor Makao Mutua, is listening. It will not be for want of trying, but the Kenyan people will not allow Kenya to be taken back. This is the destination of the second liberation that remains to be reached. In my opinion, Kenya remains on track despite the 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards being witnessed. The book we launched today is an important beacon on judiciary transformation and an important guide for Kenya's future as a democratic nation. Lastly, third, By publishing this book, Mutunga avails to the public a front and behind the scenes documentation of where the judiciary was when he assumed office, its sticking issues during his term, and where things stood when he left. The Kenyan public deserves to know. Documentation is a form of judicial accountability. The Kenyan public for generations to come will scrutinize and debate his term. The book also showcases how the podium, that is speeches, the bench, judicial opinions, and the academy, journals and articles and lectures could be used to provide transformative leadership. And I'm pleased that Dr. Willy Mutunga has not retired. He continues to provide leadership, even in his capacity as a former Chief Justice. This culture should be embraced by all of us who aspire to build our constitutional democracy. So let the discussions of the ideas in this book begin, and that the work of our forebearers in the struggle continue to flourish. I thank you, and God bless you, and God bless Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senior Counsel Paul Mwite. Next up is Professor Kameri Mbote. IT team, if you could bring her up so she can finish her remarks. And as she comes up, I can say the academics, including myself, we will also continue to jealously guard the 2010 Constitution. Professor, can you hear us? Yes.
Practices, health.
Next up is going to be, well,
Mutunga. The judge can be an intellectual, can be a judge, great asset in both the roles of Chief Justice and Judge. And I'd like to again thank Sylvia Kanara, Professor, for putting this, the team that put this together, and ask her to get all the nuggets that
Thank you very much, Professor Kameri Mbote. And next is Edward Ouko, who was the first Auditor General under the 2010 Constitution. He was also an Auditor General at the African Development Bank, an issue I'm very interested and passionate about, especially in this era of with little or no accountability. Thank you, Professor Gopo. We have the chief guest, our chief guest, our Chief Justice, Martha Kaume, the Emeritus Chief Justice, Maraga, and our host, of course, I don't see him there, the Vice Chancellor of this university. Oh, you changed places. Yeah, this is also my university, so I'm alumni of this university, and so it's a honor to be here. And of course, all protocols observed, and ladies and gentlemen, I really feel honored to come here before you to talk, because once you are a former justice, former Auditor General, you don't get these chances to speak. So I'm really honored to be here. Now, the Chief Justice of Mutunga, just like myself, came into the office in a very particular environment, just after the new Constitution. And I believe, like myself and like him, we felt that we really needed to give back and the spirit of that Constitution. We therefore had the onerous duties of trying to bring Kenya from the past, Kenya which we have discussed here, and I see Honorable Willy talking about and explaining what it was. So when we came into the office, first of all, at least for us, the Article 10, the national values, was, I think, uppermost in our mind. And for us, we came from outside, just like yourself, because we are not in the mainstream public sector. We really wondered, first of all, looking back, whether our employment and our getting into the office was really, first of all, transparent. And at that time, I must say, Kenya was marvelous. The moon was good. The element of transparency was there, and that transparency is one which I believe will continue to struggle. But at that time, we had that transparency. So one of that in a way for us, for me who came from outside, where they said, in fact, during my interview, they wondered how you could leave this high salary to come and take a public job. And the answer was really something of passion, something of giving back, something of living the new Constitution, because the inspiration of the new Constitution was so high. And I believe that inspired the transformations which we are talking about here. In public service, and as I found it, and I believe Chief Justice Mutunga also found it, there were a number of things to change, a number of, if there was going to be transformation, to begin the transformation, there were the people, because the person who was there before the new Constitution needed to have come and live the mood and our passion and our expectation in the transformative journey. There was also the feeling that we had to show an evidence of change, of moving a mammoth old system into the new system. And in this, I think, Chief Justice, you did extremely well, because if at all we talk of transformative journey, you established it. You built the foundation for the transformative journey, which was then, carried on with the Chief Justice Maraga, and which is very proudly being taken over and going forward with our respected Chief Justice Martha Koome. We wish you well. Now, apart from change, there is this idea of independence. So I believe you're wondering what kind of independence did we want? And the fact that we had to create that independence. Because, as you said, even before, people talked of an independent judiciary. But I don't think it was that independence which the Kenyans wanted us to have. And that is a constant fight. And you started the fight. In my office, it also kept on being a permanent fight, and of course, a permanent fight with clawbacks. So you managed to steer, and today we are still very proud that you have brought in the Chief Judiciary, which is very transformative and which is actually very independent. And we are only proud when we see we have our own Chief Justice express herself in the fight to make sure that this independence is respected. And we encourage you and hope that you will continue with what good work you are doing. Now, I really was not to speak very much, but to just tell you that in public service it has not been easy. Changing people, or at that time building the foundation upon which now the transformative journey is being talked about, was not easy. But you managed it with, articulation which was simple, which was human, and which, you continue to bear those ethos now. You remain simple, my friend, as you have been, because simplicity is what will carry you after all these many opulence of these offices. As for us, really, we follow you, and we really want to congratulate you because of this book, this publication. I believe I'm going to underline and read it very closely because there's a lot to learn. With that, may I thank you and wish you well, my brother, and also wish all of you well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Uko. Sharia Publishing House is interested in your story. We want your book too. These stories have to be told. So we also want to recognize Brigadier Boynet, the gentleman who professionalized the intelligence services. Where is he? And transformed it from the notorious special branch with the torture chambers that many people, including Willy and others, were put there. We really wanted strong institutions and individuals who are going to help transform them. We're also interested in your story as well. Like Professor Mbote said, even all the speeches here, we shall make sure they are available, not just for Justice Mutunga, but for posterity. So very soon we are coming up to our next speaker because we are nearing the launch of the book. Our next speaker is Chief Justice Martha Koome. By the way, I remember Chief Justice Martha Koome, those days of the struggle in the 90s with the GBM karaoke, Paul Mwite. And when Paul Mwite says the 2010 Constitution is the destination of the second liberation, I believe Chief Justice Martha Koome and the entire Supreme Court and Judiciary will maintain the 2010 Constitution. I'm a tenured professor, I can say that. We need the 2010 Constitution preserved, and it's in the very good hands of an able jurist, Chief Justice Martha Koome.
Thank you very much, Professor Gabi. Good evening, everybody. Allow me to save time and say that I adopt the list of distinguished protocol that has been cited by the previous speakers this evening, and acknowledge the presence of everybody, our chief guests, my colleagues, predecessors, chief justices, my family of the judiciary, judges, our professors here, all of you. Thank you very much. I stand here with a lot of humility and gratitude because I'm also a graduate of this great university, and I continue to celebrate that. Allow me to thank our host this evening, Chief Justice, now Professor Dr. Willy Mutunga. First of all, we celebrate you because upon retirement from this very high office, you have gone on to hand another feather to your cap and become a professor. We also thank you for writing this book and sharing with the whole world the insights on how to engineer fundamental change in the institution of the judiciary, an institution that is often neglected, described the way Mboru did, that it is an institution that is so weak in its budgetary allocation, in the infrastructure, in the human resource capital, and remains so and is expected with a paltry 18 billion to serve an economy that I was told the other day is a 13 trillion economy. So the struggle continues for the strength of the institution of the judiciary. So many things Professor C.J. Mutunga has been saying about you. You are also a founder of so many institutions, bodies, civil society organizations, Kenya Human Rights Commission, Kituo cha Sheria, Mohori, and so many others that you founded. So I endorse the statement by Professor Kameri Mbote that these very profound statements that have been spoken here this evening about you should actually be a sequel to this book because you are a founder of institutions. This book, The Becons of Judiciary Transformation, speaks to your significant impact on the trajectory and development of the Kenyan judiciary. It brings to light your vision for institutional transformation and how you went about to work to create a very vibrant and efficient judiciary fit for contemporary judicial work and modern times by introducing a very impactful blueprint, the Judiciary Transformation Framework, which we continue to build on even today. Through this JTF, you championed strong structures and personnel to anchor reforms for strong institutional capacity of the judiciary. The book we are launching tonight brings to fore your concerns and efforts to engender commitment to accountability and integrity in the administration of justice. As it is evident from the speeches and papers published in this correction, you have recognized that upholding moral and professional integrity ought to be the north for every judge and every judicial officer. This correction also includes your judicial opinions as the President of the Supreme Court. What strikes me every time I read your opinions, Chief Justice Mutunga, I see, and you will see this for yourselves when you read this book, is your singular concern that Kenya ought to develop and indigenous jurisprudence. We ought not to be borrowing anything now that we have the 2010 Constitution that is alive with the Kenya's history and context. You have always urged us and continue to do so through these timeless opinions that we need to develop homegrown ideas and solutions to resolve our own problems, because our problems are local, they require local solutions. Thank you very much. I'm sure we who are still on the bench will rise to the challenge posed and make Kenya sharper and a contributor to jurisprudence at the continental and global stage, and not be relegated to mere importers of jurisprudence. I celebrate the publication of this collection of speeches, writings, and judicial opinions as it introduces to the world the efforts and challenges of transforming judicial institutions from an African perspective. I've been called, even by the Lord Chief Justice of England and Wales, to share our experiences, especially on embracing technology. And some of the questions that I was being asked made me realize that we have something to share with the world. Thank you very much for setting the stage of embracing technology as an enabler to justice. This is a perspective that has been lacking, given the available books about judicial tenures tend to be drawn and focused on experiences from the Western world. I'm certain the book will enrich conversations and debates within the legal community across the globe on conscious transformation of judicial institutions. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, let me once again commend and congratulate Professor Mutunga, Chief Justice Emeritus, for sharing with the world the valuable insights found in the book. It takes a lot of sacrifice, time, and effort to put together a book of this nature. It is only daring and valiant amongst us who dare take on such a task. And allow me to thank most sincerely the editors of the book, Professor Sylvia Kangara, Duncan Okero, and Kwamsheti Makoha, and all those who worked on this wonderful publications. I thank you also for inviting me to share in this very momentous occasion of launching this great book. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice Martha Koome. And now, as Mufasa the poet comes to set up, I want to let you know we have apologies from Honorable Ekwe Ethure. And I also want to recognize, as requested by the organizers, Judge William Ouko. Where's Judge William Ouko? You may not remember Judge Ouko. I used to come to your office regularly with the late James Ratiri Kowade. So I know you've been in the struggle for a long time, and I want to read the blurb in the front of the book that Justice Ouko wrote for this book. Having served under 9 Chief Justices as a career court administrator, magistrate, and judge, Chief Justice Willy Mutunga's tenure 2011 to 16 will go down in history as one of the most transformative in scale and pace, in depth and effect, in commitment and resolve. The transformation program he instituted fundamentally repositioned and strengthened the judiciary in terms of budgets, infrastructure, staff welfare, training, recruitment, jurisprudence, and institutional independence. The selection of speeches, articles, judicial opinions represents his eminent career transcripts. A staunch defender of law and human rights, they're an illustration of his zeal in pursuit of equality, indigenous jurisprudence, preservation of the arts and culture in partnership with the youth, and the defense of judicial independence. This book resonates with our history, our humanity, and is a glimmering challenge to each one of us to uphold the rule of law. There are many people I could recognize in the audience. Of course, there's Justice Ibrahim, who was one of my mentors when I worked at Waruhia and Mwite. Justice Kathurima, who encouraged me when I wrote articles about the judiciary in the nation in the very, very, very dark days of the judiciary, when there was one decision maybe 5 years that you could talk about. So many leaders of the destination of the 2010 Constitution here today. There's also a message from somebody else who was supposed to be here today, another institution, and this is Opande, who has, I think, a pass-out parade today, General Opande, who writes to the Chief Justice, thanks for the invite to this book launch. I would have very much liked to attend this auspicious occasion where one of our citizens took head-on a more or less failed institutions to turn it around, something that is familiar to me. Due to an early commitment, he was unable to be here. So Mufasa, the poet, are you ready?
This song is dedicated to you, my good brother, my good friend. You know, we know each other. More life, more positivity. Kuna mtu mzalendo, anapenda nchi yake, anapenda rafiki zake, na watoto wa jirani zake. Tena hapendi balaa, anaishi kwa jasho yake, na hawezi lala njaa. Ana marafiki zaidi ya ndugu zake, sio lazima, sio lazima, sio lazima, sio lazima tugombane ndio mambo yawe sawa, sio lazima tupigane eti tuwe sawa, sio lazima useme ndio eti usikike, sio lazima, sio lazima. Unaleta vita, unatafuta haki yako, sio lazima tugombane, si tungejenga nchi yetu, sababu utalala njaa, mfaidi wa kwenyenye na bado amekuchanganya, ukikubalia bwerere, ona hauna kazi na hauna mali, wanaona kama hauna thamani, sio lazima. Jamani, nisaidieni tu kuimba, semeni nini? What a beautiful voices. What did you say? Sio lazima. Ili niwache mshahara lakini uongozi endelee, si ndio? Sio lazima. Mufasa brother.
I want to write poems that will plant thoughts about planting trees, then call those poems poetries. I want to write about shapes and angles, and maybe say, be careful of circles. They make it hard for you to find a right angle. I want to write about the town I'm from and the city under the sun. I want to write about the sound of Africa and the rhythm of my country. I want to write and even say, I'm not my mother's tribe, I am her pride. Because when I was born, my mother didn't say, woo, another Kalenjin. She said, my son. I want to write about the leaders before our time. I want to write about the leaders of our time. I want to write about the first woman CJ in East Africa. I want to write about human rights defenders. I want to write about CJ Willy. I want to write about CJ Maraga. I want to write about JSC or the ABC. I could land an interview at KBC. I want to write about justice. I want to write about what's just. I want to write about just us. I want to write about change. I'm not talking about the change, the loose change that you need before you're getting into Matatu. No. You know, Kenyan touts promise you change, but they hardly give it. No. I want to talk about change. I want to talk about social transformation through access to justice. I want to write and even say there's no special village or town where leaders come from. These leaders come from within us. These leaders are a reflection of who we are. So change won't come when our leaders change. Change will come when we change.
What did you say? Sio lazima. Believe in love, believe in God. What did you say? Hata kama wanakuchukia lazima utakuwa. Wanataka kulipa hongo na simama na sheria. Sio lazima. Sio lazima tugombane. Ndio mambo yawe sawa. Sio lazima tupigane. Eti tuwe sawa. Sio lazima tuseme eti Thank you so much. Thank you. My name is Nelson Mandela, aka Ambassador Mandela, and that guy there, you'll always be our brother, our father, and the teacher. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's always good to punctuate all the speeches with the artist, which characterizes the life and legacy of Chief Justice Willy Mutunga. It's really hard to introduce Chief Justice Willy Mutunga. For me, the iconic picture of Willy Mutunga is in the handcuffs. That is my iconic, that is how I remember Willy Mutunga. When I read this book, which recalls the history of the struggle in this country, like no other book that recalls, for example, Pan-Africanism. It's not just Kenya. You know, so for example, in one of the chapters, the chapter on a Pan-African jurisprudence to liberate Africa, it says the editors who did a wonderful job contextualizing these materials in the book say, the Chief Justice took on the role of an ambassador for the Kenyan experience with judicial transformation and lessons that other African countries can learn from it. He took on the role of an ambassador of African and global South legal thought and was an intellectual leader in a global cultural struggle over ideas. That is really profound. Who are rallying for the foregrounding of the African context in the development of indigenous jurisprudence, as Chief Justice Martha Koome noted. He warns against the insularity and calls on African lawyers to not only use, but also to take the role of being shapers and producers of international law as well. Please help me to welcome to the stage Chief Justice Willy Mutunga.
Let me share one thought before I do the protocols. I used to say people should be celebrated when they are alive, but now I think that's a bad idea. Because you sit there and it's, yeah, I think it's something to think about. Because when you are dead in this country, people will tell you not to say anything bad about the dead. Let me do the protocols. Let me start with the chief guest, CJ Othman, from Dar es Salaam. And I need to tell you that there is some Dar spirit around. I saw Sally Kosgei, who studied in Dar es Salaam. I don't know whether there are others who are here. Of course, Makau Mutua, when he demonstrated against the dictatorship, he studied in Dar es Salaam before going to Harvard. And even his wife, Adina Mutua, visited Dar because her uncle was in exile in Dar es Salaam. And Dar es Salaam was the mecca for, revolutionaries. In Dar es Salaam, the PLO was there, all the liberation movements, Tuparos from Uruguay, everybody was there. So there's always that dark spirit where there's a kind of reunion, because this is also a bit of a reunion because of the people who studied here and people who also worked here. I wish to thank VC Kiama for hosting us. I'm very happy that CJ Maraga and CJ Kome came to the launch. My former colleagues who are judges and magistrates who are here. I wish to thank the editors for the work that they did, which is very good. We expected Gado to talk about the artist, but he has been well represented by Mandela, Mufasa, and the other comrades and friends who are around, Mwangi and his wife. So it's a great celebration. I just wanted to be very brief and say that our transformation philosophy was predicated on the idea of service to the public and to the staff. And this has been, spoken to by a lot of people. And we supported a robust culture change strategy that proved vital in successfully laying the foundation for the transformation program of one arm of government. I have to thank Ouko. This speech is disjointed, but it's fine. Judge Ouko, sorry, this is Edward Ouko, the former Auditor General. He was my mentor in understanding what the head of the judiciary, what that position means. And he helped me get rid of our auditors who are actually from the Treasury. And he told me that it's only his office that can audit the judiciary, and we shouldn't have auditors from the, from the executive. So armed with that advice, I summoned the auditors, and they told me they couldn't talk to me unless I got permission from Treasury, CS Treasury. So I did what a lot of activists would do. We went and changed the locks and threw out their stuff, and the rest is history. So we had an auditor who actually was kind of the office, one individual, Wanyama. I still remember Wanyama. I don't know whether he's here. But he was very, very useful always, because he would tell you when things were going wrong. And he had access to my office to tell me what was going on. The strengthening the independence of the institution through robust independence and constructive interdependence is, as Chief Justice Comey said, is a continuing struggle. But there are structures, the National Council for the Administration of Justice, court users committees at local level, and productive partnerships with Council of Governors. So that constructive interdependence is very, 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 very important, because it's that dialogue that can convince politicians that if you capture a judiciary, how sure are you that when you leave, your enemies will not capture it and come after you? And where will you run to? And that seems to resonate well with a lot of dictators in particular. The expanding access to justice, which is, the figures have been given by Boru. Chief Justice Comey is continuing with social transformation through access to justice, because a lot of you probably don't know that 95% of Kenyans don't come to our courts. They go to all manner of places. Even witch doctors, if they'll get justice from them, that's fine. Although it might be difficult, of course, to institutionalize that, but there are customs that can institutionalize that. The intellectual tradition has been talked about. We revived and revitalized JTI. The trainings increased, created a culture of publishing where judges and other judicial officers and staff write in judiciary publications. I was telling Chief Justice Othman and the Vice Chancellor Kiama that when I joined the judiciary, there were judicial officers who had studied and read for their LLMs in secret, because they said if they were known to be doing their studies, they would be victimized. And if you talk to Justice Coril, if you talk to Justice Meoli and others, they had done their studies secretly. So the JTI, which continues in strength, is established that intellectual tradition and became an institution of judicial higher learning. The humanizing the institution to the public, through the judiciary, the ops person. When I got into Twitter, people told me that that was a bad idea, but through Twitter, I was able to get feedback from, all sources, and some of them I will never forget, like the guy who, after the 2013 election, a petition rather, he told me in a post on Twitter that from now on, we'll call you Chief Injustice. And I remember we discussed that actually in JTI. Why are we called justice? Why are we called justice, you know, when some people think that what we do is injustice? But as you know, in this country, and CJ Maraga knows, and I'm sure CJ Kome will know, presidential election is a very difficult proposition, particularly when the country is ruled by politics of division. It's very, very, very difficult to get a national consensus, you know, on that. Because when I saw in President Uhuru Kenyatta on the 9th of April, 2013, and I got to Kasarani, I got a standing thunderous ovation, you know, louder than what Uhuru Kenyatta got. And as I was driving back home, I asked myself, what if I was in Kisumu or Kitui, where the Code people were, you know, probably I would have been stoned. That's the, even if you get Solomon, you go and get him, he will be driven out of this town. So we also, the safeguarding the rule of law by protecting and upholding the Constitution during an unprecedented transitional moment, the developing theory of interpretation of the Constitution. I'm just kind of mentioning some of the Becons. And I think there is need to embrace the culture of archiving of our history, comprising individual and institutional experiences. And I applaud and glorify the work that has been done by some judges who have written articles and books, Judge Zioki wa Makau and others. I think there are two of our former colleagues actually who have written books on theology. Sitati and somebody else. And that's laudable. The book we launched today complements the Judiciary Museum, which we launched in June 2016, and is free and open to the public. I wish to thank the editors, Professor Kangara, Duncan Okello, and Kwamchezi Makoa, for their efforts in creating this intellectual archive. I need to add here that Duncan, Okello, and Makoa were part of the Office of the CJ. I always tell people that when I was sworn in as CJ, I had 2 secretaries and 80 bodyguards. There was no capacity, and that capacity was created by Duncan, Komchesi, there was Abdul, there was Jerry who is here, Jerry Uthuku, who actually organized the swearing in so that it could be done effectively and efficiently. Then the Lina Sarapai, Kennedy, Bidali was the first chair of the Judiciary Ops person. So there are a lot of speeches. I have to say this. When you read them, you should understand that there are many ideas there that are not mine. There are a lot of speeches written. The bulk of the speeches, Duncan wrote them after we sat and discussed. And he knew when I was angry and I needed to shoot people. So the speech reflected that mode. And he knew when I was diplomatic and I wanted to negotiate. Komchesi is an old hand in the media. So there was that team. JTI, Judge Ngugi wrote quite a number of speeches, and the Attorney General, who was then President of the Court of Appeal, also wrote some, and I'm sure there are others that I asked, to write. Governors of certain counties, they would give me a draft, and then I'll, look at it. And the idea here was basically to challenge the notion that judges speak through their judgments. These speeches, when you go to church and you are asked to preach, or you go to a school and you are giving speeches, that is itself developing jurisprudence. Okay, lastly, I wish to thank C.J. Othman again for gracing the function as our chief guest. One, I should have said, Francis Okello, who was the Chief Justice's classmate in Dar es Salaam, is here. When I was talking about the Dar spirit, I forgot my dear friend Francis Okello. Mutula Kilonzo was also in that class of the Chief Justice. Karibu sana ndugu. I think you are the next one to speak, sio? Unataka tukupigie ndebe,
Thank you, Chief Justice Willy Mutunga, for those very kind remarks. And I'll just take a moment to introduce you, Chief Justice. And before I do that, we have apologies from Justice Smokin Wanjala, who was online, but when the mishap happened, he had to go to something else. Also, two of Willy's friends who had been invited, the first retired General Lazarus Mbeuo, who says that, like I'd said before, and I confused the name there, that you'd have liked very much to be here to be witness to one of our citizens who took head-on a more or less failed institution to turn it around, and he said that's something that's familiar with him. So that's actually attributable to General Lazaro. And then General Pande, please thank my friend Willy for inviting me to his book launch. I'm, however, unable to attend the occasion due to my current engagement at an international peace support training center. The course I'm running will be graduating on the same day as your event will be taking place. Wishing you a successful launch. And now I'd like to introduce, and I'll take a moment to introduce our chief guest, Mohammed Chande Othman, who served as Chief Justice of Tanzania from December 2010 to January 2017. Before that, he was a judge of the High Court, a Justice of Appeal with the Court of Appeal, Tanzania's apex court. He was also the chairman of the Presidential Commission on the Inquiry on the Relocation of Pastoralists and their livestock from Mutunga Valley in Ihefu, Barali District, Tanzania. He worked as a public prosecutor for the Bank of Tanzania and also with the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Justice Othman currently serves under a UN General Assembly mandate as eminent person appointed, and that's the UN General Assembly, to review the conditions and circumstances resulting in the tragic death here on this continent in 1961 of Dag Hammarskjöld, the second UN Secretary General, and members of the party accompanying him. He was also the chairman of the Council Sokoine University of Agriculture and Applied Sciences, Tanzania's third largest public university, a member of the Board of Trustees of the Aga Khan University, a member of the Elders Council of the African Judges and Jurists Forum, a member of the African Group for Justice and Accountability, a Pan-African independent group of legal experts on international humanitarian law and human rights, about which he has written a lot about. Internationally, he is highly respected for his deep understanding of the political, legal, and other dimensions relating to international humanitarian law, refugee law, criminal law, and evidence and peacekeeping. And I'm a witness to this because my neighboring law school, Northwestern University, hosts some of those things that they did with the Judiciary in Tanzania, and I was witness to some of those visits when he visited Chicago. He's one of the 9 members of the independent expert review group appointed by the Assembly of State Parties of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court in December 2019 to review the performance, efficiency, and effectiveness of the court and the Rome Statute system. His previous experience includes that of Prosecutor General of East Timor and Chief Prosecutions in the UN International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. Another very important court on this continent that has produced cutting-edge jurisprudence. Under the UN auspices in 2006, he served as a member of the UN Human Rights Council, high-level commission on inquiring the situation in Lebanon, as well as the United Nations Human Rights Commission independent expert on human rights situation in the Sudan. He's got tons of publications, a graduate, as we heard, of the University of Dar es Salaam, Webster University Geneva, and the Hague Academy of International Law. So I'm delighted to now introduce to you Chief Justice Othman. Please help me to welcome him in a Kenyan welcome. Come on, a Kenyan welcome.
Chief Justice Martha Koome, Chief Justice David Maraga, and Willy Mutunga, dear colleagues from the Judiciary, members of the Bar and the Academia, good afternoon. It's a great honor and privilege for me to be invited by Chief Justice Mutunga and the publishers to be part of this launch celebration. And on top of that, it gives me remarkable pleasure to be in the company of many familiar faces, our mentors, my colleagues, Francis Okello and others who went to Dar es Salaam, Professor Mutua, and judges, attorneys, and so on. And being in East Africa, there are many, many occasions that we have been together, so I want to thank you. I also want to thank our hosts, the University of Nairobi. The Vice Chancellor is here with us for gracing us the opportunity to use this venue, Taifa Hall, which I'm sure is not a sheer coincidence because it rekindles both sweet memories where our colleague Willy Mutunga began his intellectual journey, but also sour moments of his victimization. So I think it is very appropriate that we are here. I think having heard the very insightful reflections of many who have spoken before me, the lead editor and others, I think they have already covered the 504 kilometers of the book. So what I would do, probably it is more safe, I would say it would have been more safe to say that I concur and end the launch. But I think given the high value you have attached to this occasion, and of course we all agree the remarkable tenure of Chief Justice Mutunga and your presence, so maybe I will attempt a few kilometers. So I will reflect on about 5 or 6 very briefly issues, what I think, not only myself, because we have in East Africa and Southern Africa a Chief Justices Forum. So it is a club of Chief Justices, so maybe I can reflect a little bit what me and my colleagues would have wished to say. So the first thing I want to share, I think, has to do with what is covered in the Becons of Judiciary transformation, and that is judicial appointments, including the appointment of Chief Justice Mutunga as Kenya's first Chief Justice under the 2010 Constitution, the most progressive constitution, I must admit, in East Africa, and a new breed of constitution after the South African Constitution of 1996. So appointments are always, you know, in judiciary controversial. And I recall when, I'm sure you know, Benjamin Cardozo, one of the brilliant jurists and a judge of the Supreme Court, when he was nominated to the US Supreme Court, one of his colleagues, Judge McReynolds, had this to say. He said, it seems that the only way you can get on the Supreme Court these days is to be the son of a criminal. So judicial appointments are always a big issue, and I think you had in Kenya, this elaborates, and for the first time in the region, a very competitive, public, transparent process. And it was no walk in the park. And I'm sure for successive Chief Justices, but I think that you are able to have 3 cycles between in a period of 10 years has shown really that it is working, it is something to be emulated in East Africa. And I think, speaking about Chief Justice Mutunga in this process, I think one notice is he was acceptable. In Swahili you say alikubalika, na alioaminika na Wakenya. So, because of that process, so he ascended, of course, to an office, and all his writings and so on clearly demonstrate that he did not ascend on a throne or sultanate, but he ascended to an office in which he himself accepts that the stewardship he provided was a collegial one. And I think collegiality is something that you see, and that struck me also runs through the book. And I think this is something quite important. But you know, at times, normally the tenure of a Chief Justice is always an issue. In this case, 5 years. So I think sufficient affirmative responses, affirmative development with the judiciary transformation framework and so on, because it was a reasonably sufficient period of time. But what also marked this process for some of us is the voluntary premature departure. People in leadership rarely voluntarily vacate office unless there is a crisis. But his persona and political fiber didn't want to leave a vacuum, and I think that is something which we all recall and respect. So the first thing that I wanted to say was this question of the appointment and the coming into office, and I think that is, but one aspect that also struck me is his advice. He's not very mean or stingy in giving advice, and that is why you have all those lectures and so on. And he advised the Judiciary Service Commission to do away or to debunk, you know, some of those narratives, and he talked about 6 narratives, but one struck me was this narrative within the judiciary of an insider-outsider. I was considered an outsider. Chief Justice Mutunga, I think, also an outsider. But this is part of judiciary organizational culture which runs very, very deep. For example, somebody you know very well is my predecessor, Justice Augustino Ramadhani, who was here in relation to some work with the Judiciary Service Commission. So my predecessor, Chief Justice Ramadhani, had been 11 years Chief Justice of Zanzibar. He'd been 17 years Justice of Appeal at our appeal court before he was named Chief Justice in 2007. So he had 28 years of solid experience at the highest court in Zanzibar in Tanzania. And he was named, when he was named, until he left, he was considered by institutional judiciary internal culture as an outsider. Yeah. So it runs deep. And I'm very grateful when you read Becons of Transformation. There is a lot about addressing judiciary culture. I mean, the president of the Judiciary Workers Staff Association, he was mentioning about tea and so on. You know, this kind of, and many, many issues. But I think addressing culture was something very captivating. And those kind of lessons are really, really, really helpful. I think the second remark I want to make, and I think this has been mentioned already by many people, is the strategic vision. So Chief Justice Mutunga entered with a strategic vision and agenda. And this agenda was for the judiciary to reclaim its space as a co-equal third branch of government, and of course respect, and has been mentioned here, for the independence of the judiciary. And that battle, the struggle continues, but I think there were many, many victories. But the war, as Chief Justice Gome mentioned, the struggle continues. It is something that we all cherish and must fight for in the company, of course, of other stakeholders, the bench included, and the bar and civil society organizations. So judicial independence was something that I mentioned, and I think the Becons of Judiciary Transformation has a number of references to it. Chief Justice Mutunga talks about termites, mchwa, and regressive forces, and so on. And I think those we admit are there. And of course, they need to be prickled, kama sisi tunavyosema kule watumbuliwe. The third one, I think, is about judicial integrity and accountability, and this minefield corruption, and more important, the perception of corruption. Very difficult to eradicate, but I think there are lessons learned, headway had been made, and we are grateful for that. I thought that both in terms of the strategic vision and the strategic framework, two elements, I think, come out quite clearly during Chief Justice Mutunga's tenure, at least when we look at it. One is the question of ownership. He never claimed ownership, and I think it would be an insult to call him a czar. I noticed a book today in the library of an anti-corruption czar and some other czar who wrote autobiographies. But I think we must recognize, and I recognize there is now a critical mass within the judiciary, within the legal fraternity, for this. But the second aspect, and I think that was mentioned here, was that there's no strategic framework which is final. There's continuity, and we know there's continuity in Chief Justice Maraga's sustaining judiciary transformation framework, and there is now more consolidation under Chief Justice Koume. I think when I mention corruption, normally the judiciaries were very shy, and this is what we find out. I mean, one of the biggest challenges we had is to convince judges to accept that there is corruption inside the judiciary at one of our annual meeting of judges. And the request, I had invited Mark Bomani, our first Attorney General, a person of very high integrity. And we asked him, judges, what should we do to fight corruption within the judiciary? And he said, do one thing. Just come out with a statement that you admit, judges admit that there is corruption in the judiciary. So I thought that was very good, yes. So we had a meeting. I said, okay, it was a little bit late, 6 o'clock. So it's okay, tomorrow morning, there's a drafting committee. Tomorrow morning, we will read out the statement. And there was lobbying overnight. And the next morning, the judges refused to come out with that public statement. So this is how it's very. You have to change the whole culture, mindset, and so on to fight this endemic corruption. But also our societies. You know, I came across an East African survey by the East African Institute, which is not long ago, in our youth in the region. So this survey, it raised an alarm bell because it says up to 85% of youth who are between 14 and 36 years of age in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania believed it did not matter how much one made money as long as one did not end up in jail. Yeah. So it's quite a serious issue, and I'm glad that we have made a lot of headway, and the blueprint here, Becons of Judicial Corruption Transformation, has a lot of elements in it. The fifth point I wanted to refer to is the question of access to justice and the core functions, and I think these were mentioned by the registrar in Get Detail and by others here about the possibility now for every Kenyan to have his day in court. It is guaranteed, and all the re-engineering and so on of business processes that have taken place, the performance indicators, the dealing away with technicalities of the law and so on, and we can go on and on. And we in Tanzania have borrowed some of your jurisprudence. My successor, Chief Justice Juma, has incorporated the oxygen principles, which is part of our law now in Tanzania, both in the appellate courts and in the lower courts. And this is one. So there's a lot of reforms, and those are itemized in the Becons of Judiciary Transformation, which are, I think, quite important, and there is work to be done. I think the fifth point that I want to mention, and this is that for me, the beacon of judiciary transformation stands on lessons learned, and I think it is relevant not just to Kenya, but to East Africa and the SADC region. And reading parts of that book, I think there's a lot of material that assists us in the region. So I want to finally Also express my high esteem to the former Chief Justice for the energy in penning the book of Becons of Judiciary Transformation and the auditors. Of course, this is no ordinary autobiography, no ordinary memoir. It converses with a wide range of stakeholders, youth, artists. It talks about culture, religion, politics, ethnicity, and so on. So here you see that we have in former Chief Justice Mutunga also, I think, a judicial statesman, because most of us often we camp only within our own grounds. So here you have a colleague who traverses other areas, and I think that is the validity, I think, of the book. Much as legacy is ultimately permanently assigned and reinforced by history, I think we can confidently agree that the beacons of judiciary transformation, with it the pegs of constitutionalism, the rule of law, independence of the judiciary, and equal and timely justice for all, are anchored on a firm foundation. I think it remains for all of us and the community of interest that we represent to continue to win the war and to complete the journey which he has commenced. If we desert, flop, or give away, we fail the beacons of judiciary transformation and what continues solidly after it. I think he makes a call that the gains must be defended by sweat and blood. I think that will seem to me to be inevitable in a number of situations, if need be. So I want to thank you all for your participation, for your joining in to celebrate this launch, important launch, and I think of a source book which we can use in the region, and I will be one maybe for to accept and to tell the editors that I can also be your agent in Tanzania. So I thank you, and I'm most honored to launch this distinguished book. Thank you very much.
He's coming. Thank you very much, Chief Justice Othman, for those wonderful words. I think it's a day like today when we realize the words on the Constitution are not just parchments, as they say in the US, or a piece of paper. They're not empty platitudes, but rather they are values and interests that have to be defended. Words from the Chief Justice of Tanzania. So now we are coming to the moment we've been waiting for. I invite all the Chief Justices and the editors. Duncan, I see you seated. You did a wonderful job from what I'm hearing today. We want you here. Where is Quams? Professor? People are wearing masks, so, you know. Okay, we'll do the picture. Is this balanced? Maybe one person on the other side, you think? Yeah, you can come on this side, Professor Kangara. Sorry? Am I strong enough? So, do we have everybody here? Professor Kangara, do we have everybody here? Where's Willy? Where's Chief Justice? Oh. You like being inconspicuous, eh? Yeah, good. Yeah. Go right here next to current justice. Yeah, there's something. It will not explode. Okay. All right. So, yes, I know. I'm not standing in their way. Okay. Professor, what are you afraid of? Go nearer. What? Duncan, now you're hiding. Duncan. Mr. Okello, what's going on? Does that look good? I'm not relevant in this picture. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment we've been waiting for, why you all came here to launch this excellent book about which you've heard a lot about today. So, so in 5, 4, 3. Willy, what's going on? All right, so again, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
A celebration throughout the years. So bring your good times and your laughter too. We gon' celebrate your party with you. Come on now. Let's all celebrate and have a good time. Celebration.
Congratulations to the editors for a wonderful job and for organizing this event. I think I hear there's a picture, some pictures to be taken. If Justice Maraga, you'd allow us to do that. Thank you. So will somebody from down there come and help arrange the group here so that you can take the pictures you want? None of us is... Have they taken enough? Not yet? And then we shall have the vote of thanks. And you can see we are really, very closely on time. Yeah. Copies of the book, also we can hold copies of the book, I'm told, if there are some remaining from the sales. Yeah. This won't take too long. The copies are coming. So as the books are coming, we also recognize the outgoing president of the Law Society of Kenya, Nelson Harvey. Uko wapi? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so for the vote of thanks, one of the editors of the book, Komachetsi Makoha, is going to do that.
Maybe this works better. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Our chief guest, the Honorable Chief Justice Othman Chande, Chief Justice Kome, Chief Justice Emeriti David Maraga and Willy Mutunga, Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, Justices of the Supreme Court, Justices of the Court of Appeal, Justices of the High Court, magistrates, members of the Judicial Service Commission, past and present. We also have a judge of the East African Court of Justice. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the highest concentration of legal gray matter per square dot. Let's clap for the legal profession. Home is the sailor, home from the sea, and the hunter, home from the hill. Taifa Hall is the home of social justice warriors. Please give a clap to all the social justice warriors who are present. I recognize the presence of Professor Makao Mutua. I recognize the Reverend Timothy Njoya. I recognize Davis Malombe of the Kenya Human Rights Commission. It's a very happy occasion for us to also recognize members of the senior bar. Senior counsel Paul Muite spoke earlier. I've also noticed that senior counsel Philip Murgor has walked in. I wish also to recognize the following judges whom I've noticed. If I haven't noticed you, please pardon me, but Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, Justice William Ouko, Justices of the Court of Appeal, Wanjiru Karanja, Kathurima Mtoinoti, who is also at the East African Court of Justice. I recognize also Justice of Appeal Mumbi Ngugi. I recognize Justice David Majanja, who is also a member of the Judicial Service Commission, Justice Makau, and Justice Teresia Matheka. We would like to acknowledge with deep gratitude the support of donors, because publishing is very hard work, and it's a cultural activity that's dying. So without the support and help of the Ford Foundation and Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, it would have been very difficult to get this publication out. Please accept our thanks. Maurice Makolo, I don't know if he's here, Margaret Muliwa, and Stephanie Rottenberg. We would also like to acknowledge the presence of people who also supported us in preparing proposals to seek funding and support for this book. Grace Githaiga is one of them. And I also know that my brother George Kegoro is in the house from the Open Society Initiative. We wish to recognize and acknowledge the deans of law schools. Again, I'll mention Professor Makao Mutua, even though he's an emeritus dean, Professor Ambani, Professor Peter Kwenjera of Strathmore Law School. We also wish to acknowledge Justice Smokin Wanjala, Brigadier Boynet, who transformed the National Intelligence Service from the notorious special branch into a professional outfit. We wish to recognize Edward Ouko, our first Auditor General, and also to recognize Ms. Emily Ominde, who was a member of the Judicial Service Commission and served alongside Dr. Willy Mutunga. Now, we are very grateful for the brutal and ruthless critique of friends and colleagues who were at the right shop. I'll just mention them very, very quickly. Justice Albi Sachs, who wrote the foreword, Professor Yash Palgai, who wrote the introduction, reviewers, Professor Jill Cottrell Guy, Dr. Peter Kwenjera, Professor Patricia Kameri Mbote, Professor Ambani, Atieno Odhiambo, Walter Kobe, Maxwell Miyawa, Justice Mumbi Ngugi, Justice Joel Ngugi, the Honorable Lina Sarapai, Sam Ngure, Sam Chalo, Emily Kinama, the Honorable Njeri Thuku, Kwame Owino, Seko Owino, and of course, Dr. Willy Mutunga, before he became professor. I would like to thank also the usual suspects. I know that Dennis Kabara is in the house, and there's also the Honorable Kennedy Bidali, who was ombudsman at the Office of the Chief Justice, Duncan Okello, who was Chief of Staff, and Professor Sylvia Kangara, who led us. Now, the preparation of this book took a lot of debate. Some of it got very, very acrimonious, but we are very grateful that we were able to have those debates. We wish to acknowledge also the presence of the outgoing chair of the Law Society of Kenya, Mr. Nelson Harvey, and thank the following people for providing reviews of the book in advance. The Honorable Isaac Ruto, former chair of the Council of Governors, the Honorable Ekwe Ethuro, the first Speaker of the Senate under the new Constitution, Justice William Ouko, Chief Justice Martha Koome, Chief Justice David Maraga, Supreme Court Justice Isaac Lenaola, Mr. Boru Wako, the President of the Judicial Staff Association, the Honorable Anna Madi, Professor Jill Guy, Professor Patricia Kameri Mbote, Professor Peter Kwenjera, Justice Mumbi Ngugi, Justice Joel Ngugi, Professor Yash Guy, Professor Jill Guy, and Professor Albi Sachs. In concluding, I'll just say that speeches are not just words, they are thoughts and they are ideas fused together by empathy and intellect. It has been our singular honor and pleasure to take part in the production of this book, and now we are at the end. I would like to just make two announcements. The first is that we are going to be fed and watered outside on the lawn. So there will be some refreshment on the lawn immediately when we get out of here. But secondly, is that the books can be ordered directly from Almond Print, or they'll be available at the university.
talk. Meet me in the night, tell one. Baby, you're the one I can buy you. Design me for life and you live alright. Give me keys to my ride for the night. I'm thinking about changing your life. Give me some time, I will lie. You're the light of my life and you shine so bright.
The history of the judiciary under the leadership of Chief Justice Willy Mutunga. The history of the judiciary under the leadership of Chief Justice Willy Mutunga. The history of the judiciary under the leadership of Chief Justice Willy Mutunga. The history of the judiciary under the leadership of Chief Justice Willy Mutunga. The history of the judiciary under the leadership of Chief Justice Willy Mutunga.